Over the last 800 days, I've dedicated myself to one thing, cracking the DaVinci Code.
Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to episode 3 of Cracking the DaVinci Code. In today's episode, we're going to be going over film emulation and halation. Should be really short, to be honest. There's not a lot to go over today. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. So now that we're inside Resolve, I want to talk about the LUTs. And specifically the differences between Kodak 2383 and Fuji 3153. Right now we're using the Rec 709 2383 D60. So the D60 just means daylight color temperature with a light point of 60. I honestly don't have the best explanation for that. You can Google it and it'll explain it to you. I just don't know it off the top of my head. And essentially that's what the D60 means. I know when I first started out, I was like, what's the difference between D55, D60, D65? It just means daylight, and there's a little difference between the color temperature and the white point between 65, 60, and 55. I really like the way D60 looks compared to 65 or 55, so that's why I have it starred on 3153 and 2383. So if we go back to the frame that we ended off last episode, which is basically right here, we have Kodak 2383, but if we go to Fuji 3153 right here and we apply it, there's gonna be a slight difference. So I'm gonna go full screen here, and then I'm gonna just hit Control Z so you guys can see the difference between the two. What I really want you to pay attention to here is looking kind of in the contrast of the overall image. And then right here on the outside in the shadows, you're gonna notice in Kodak 2383, this is gonna go to more of like a purplish or kind of more of like a red cyan kind of look versus kind of what we're looking at right now with Fuji 3153 applied. It kind of looks more yellowish, greenish. And then if I hit Control Z, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. So boom, right in here, we just saw exactly what I said, where it would switch from kind of more of like this palish yellow greenish to a bit more of like this purplish kind of cyan reddish look that has a bit more contrast. So actually, if we switch between the two, this is Fuji once again. You can see we lose a little bit of contrast, and that's something you have to be aware of. It's something that is built in to these film looks. So realistically, if we take a look at our scopes, and specifically the vector scope, so I'm gonna have that one pulled up, and we just take a look at the difference between what's happening on the vector scope with 2383 versus Fuji 3153. Right here, we can see everything's kind of like very spread out, and there's a lot going on in the red and just kind of like the blue. It's almost creating like a flat line within here. But if we switch over to 3153, it's changed. So we went from being pulled a little bit more towards red and kind of blue, so up in this kind of area, to being pulled more towards that like greenish cyan. And really it's very subtle, honestly, if you're just looking at the image, but you can still see. So we're losing a little bit of contrast whenever we switch to Fuji 3153 versus in Kodak 2383, we have a bit more contrast, but honestly, that's like the last thing we need to be worried about when it comes to film looks and deciding which one of these LUTs that we want to go with. We really need to be cognizant of, do you want to live in this yellowish kind of greenish pastel-y world, or do you want to live in the more kind of like reddish blue, higher contrast world, which comes with Kodak 2383 versus the other one being in Fuji 3153. I'd say like 90% of the time I'm picking Kodak 2383. This is just personal preference, but it's also what I see across the industry. It's kind of what I see online. A lot of people really prefer the way Kodak 2383 looks, and I think it has to do with that kind of higher contrast right out of box, but that's really not super important. Like I said, you really need to decide based on the colors and the way that they're being rendered, and is that what you want versus is this adding contrast to my image? Because you can always add contrast in later. And now all we're gonna do is go down into our key, and we're just gonna increase it. So I know at the very beginning of the series, we set it to 30%, as you can tell. So I'm gonna close out my vector scope here, but actually I'm gonna open that back up so you guys can actually see what's happening. Because the vector scope, if you pay attention to it, it's gonna spread out as we increase this. So if you take a look as I just kind of go like hog wild with it, but if I go back to 30%, I'm just gonna increase this until I find somewhere where I think it looks pretty nice. Yeah, so we're raising it from 30% to 40%. And as that happens, you can see just kind of how this expands out. So it's very similar to the way that it works when we're adding in contrast using the correct methods in our primaries with the pivot and contrast slider. So in there, I don't know why I exited out of it, but in there, if we do the same thing, we increase our contrast, you can see it expands in a very similar way. So although by increasing this, we are adding contrast because that's what that expansion is, what we're really doing is just baking in this look more. So the way that the colors are being rendered by Kodak 2383 is becoming more prominent throughout the image. And as that's happening, because Kodak 2383, as we showed, is a higher contrast LUT, we're getting more contrast being added into our image, which is why we're seeing it kind of stretch out. But we're also seeing it stretch out in the places where the color's being added, which is in our reds and in our blues, rather than being pushed down towards like our green, cyan, yellow areas. All right, but that's pretty much it for LUTs. I know that was kind of a yap session. Obviously, like nothing really happened on screen. There's still a lot of me talking, but moving on to halation. I actually don't have anything to say about this. I don't know how to explain this thing very well, but if we open it up here, I can give you guys a quick breakdown. So essentially, if we just like open this up and we turn it on, you can see we get halation in all the areas where you'd expect it. And that's because just like we did with exposure and our balance, we're working in linear. Now, I don't really understand what's going on within this compound node. So below, I'm gonna have a video linked to the creator of this whole like halation effect. I'll pull it up on screen here too. It's by JewWorks or TwoWorks. I don't know how to pronounce it. JewWorks, I think is how you say it. It came out 6 months ago. I saw this the day it came out. I've been using it ever since it came out. Oh my God, this dude is a godsend. This is the best halation effect I've ever used. So big shout out to him. If you want a good explanation of how this works and why it works the way it does, go watch his videos. He has this effect for free, but obviously it's already built into the power grade. So if you download the power grade, which is linked below as well for $1, you're gonna get this and you're not gonna have to worry about setting it up for DaVinci wide gamut, because the way that he has this built, he actually has it built for another color space called Aces CCT, which I used to work in, but I actually switched over from that to DaVinci wide gamut. So if you guys work in Aces CCT, you can just download his effect and then throw it right in and it'll work with your stuff. But if you're using DaVinci wide gamut like we are in this series, you're gonna need to set it up like this. So in reality, all you need to do is change the color space transform from this being use timeline. This top one will say use timeline. This say is CCT. You just need to switch over to DaVinci wide gamut, DaVinci intermediate, DaVinci wide gamut, DaVinci intermediate. And then each one of these guys right in here is basically your halation. So if I turn all these off, the halation is gonna go away. Like I said, I don't really know how this works. I just know it works like really well. He does a way better job, but if we zoom in here, it goes from kind of like pure white to yellowish to red. And even then it kind of gets like this pinkish kind of outline tint going on right here. This is exactly how halation works in real life. If we turn on, let me just pull up the actual version of halation that you have to pay for in Resolve. They look similar, but that does not look the same as this. And it looks substantially worse. So you gotta pay, what, $300-400, I can't remember how much Resolve costs, to get a mediocre. I mean, obviously it's still showing up in kind of the same areas if we look at the difference between the two. When it comes to like actual film, I'll see if I can throw a picture up on screen of like some halation zoomed in from like 60mm film or something like that. It has 3 layers or like 3 levels. So the brightest level is gonna be completely white, and then we have orange, and then it's gonna be kind of like this reddish pinkish magenta color. And that's basically like the red outline you see that halation's like famous for. But as you get brighter, it goes from red to orange to white. Like why all of a sudden when we apply Resolve's built-in halation are we getting this random blue gunk? And then it's still, yeah, it has the layers, but now there's this blue layer on top of our white layer. So like I said, it's supposed to go red, orange, white. This is going red, yellow, green, blue, white. That's not what halation looks like. And if we zoom out, like it looks all right, it looks okay. And we turn it off and compare it to this, it's night and day. It's actually night and day, like how much more clean this is. It doesn't look as like fabricated. This looks very much so like we added it in post. This looks like it was shot on film. It looks like this was built into the shot. And that's exactly what we're looking for with our halation. We don't want it to look like we added it in post like this does. This is set to 0.6, which is 60%. Obviously, we reset it, it'll go to 1, which would be at 100. And that's pretty strong. But even then at 100, we aren't getting this like random blue gunk that we are getting in this one. So I would just steer clear of anything outside of this halation, whether it's something like the Enhancer's built-in halation or the built-in halation resolve. None of them look as good or work as accurately as this built by TrueWorks. Like, once again, huge shout out to him. He created an amazing effect. It works so good. But if you guys want to support me and you want to support the channel and you also want to get this halation effect pre-set up for DaVinci Wide Gamut, because like I said, he has his set up for Asus CCT, make sure you go cop the power grade down below. It's only $1. I know online people are selling power grades for like 50 bucks, but all of this stuff is inside of the free version resolved, which is why I only have it at $1. And it's really just to save you guys time. So you don't have to worry about, building this node tree every single time you go to grade a project. And you don't have to worry about making sure you're remembering to set your pivot point to the right number for contrast or set your nodes for balance and exposure to linear. Yeah, like I said, if you want to support the channel, you want to support me so you guys can keep getting free and educational content like this, make sure you go check it out. But that's it for this week's episode. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.